Hey everyone, welcome back to Blendrix Audio Academy. I got some good stuff for you guys today. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm covering a technique that I've been using for a while now. It's called, well, I call it the instrument multi-rack. What that entails is grouping together more than one instrument in a single channel to produce a more intricate textured sound. I've covered it in brief in a couple of my other videos, but I wanted to go in real depth here and show you how that works and why I've been using it. I mean, you'll be able to see the difference that it makes. It's a pretty obvious choice. So here we go. I am going to jump right in here. What I've got is I've got this this empty group here where I've got a bass and a lead channel. I'm going to basically demonstrate for you exactly how I would build a multi-instrument rack. Then I also have a completed version over here with demonstration of exactly what this could sound like, so we don't have to spend as much time doing it in the video. Another thing that demo video, the demo section is going to cover is an IDM phase wobbles, which is a technique I've just picked up recently. I started listening to a little bit of IDM, namely a lot of stuff out of like San Francisco. You know, Bird of Prey is a good example. So some of the other IDM artists out there are just really catching my attention these days, and so I wanted to make something that I felt kind of fit in along with that. It's a style of music I hadn't tried yet, and it seemed like a good route to go. So one of the things I noticed about that really quickly after getting into it was, man, they got some really complex sounding synthesizers, and it's not just complextro kind of stuff where it's just lots and lots of distortion and changing the preset over and over again really quickly to make lots and lots of different sounds. This is actually an evolving sound that, as it's playing through one series of notes, it kind of morphs. So the techniques that I'm showing you today, both the instrument multi-rack and the phase wobble technique, in combination with a technique that I covered in a previous video, they actually allow you to put together some quite a bit more dynamic instruments that don't have to sound like they're just a bunch of cut and pasted, glued together kind of stuff. It's actually something that can really show a lot of different facets of the same sound. So let's jump into it here. Starting off, I'm going to show you the exact way that I design a bass patch, an instrument multi-rack bass patch. So I start off with, typically I'm going to end up putting in like a massive or something like that, and just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to do that on this screen here. Let's see here. Massive. All right. So you get that loaded up, and on every one of my channels, I always keep a mix gel, a spectrum, and a utility just plugged in by default, because those are pretty much, you always want to have some sort of thing that, you know, brings the different pieces of your channel together, like a compressor with a gentle ratio on it, like this mix gel, so that it just kind of pulls all the pieces together. Spectrum allows me to look at the actual spectrum analysis of the waveform that's coming through there, and I can that way be able to tell exactly if it's hitting certain notes or if it's making a bunch of noise. I can also identify like resonant frequencies that could be getting in my way or annoying me. So that's a nice thing to have, and it conveniently stays out of the way if you just hit that little arrow button and it gets up there, so it doesn't take up too much room down here in the tray. And I also put a utility on the end and set it. Usually I do all my gain staging with utilities rather than having to constantly mess with all these volume sliders up here. That tends to get on my nerves a lot, especially with automation and stuff. You can actually automate these without having to worry about messing up your things like clip envelopes. With the bass patch, I typically will try to narrow the width of the total patch. Here I'm doing about 65%. But that's on the entire channel. Once I get down into actually making a sub bass in here, I will put another utility in there and narrow that one all the way down to 0% width, because you want the sub bass to really just come straight through the center channel without playing in the stereo field too much. That's what the other voices of the bass are for, and I'll actually spread those out a little bit more, possibly even pan them left and right, so they create a much more dynamic soundscape. So I've got one massive here. The way to make a multi-rack out of this is to just right-click and group. You can also do Control G or Apple G, and then it creates an instrument rack, as you can see here. I'm going to go ahead and rename this Bass 1 multi-rack. And that goes along with that. So we've got this massive here. I'm going to want at least one more massive character in this scene here. So I'm just going to duplicate that. And then I typically, for the sub bass part, depending on what kind of music I'm making, sometimes massive is a good one to use to make sub bass, but especially for the purposes of this demo, but even in a lot of other styles of music, it can be just as well to use something a little simpler that doesn't take up quite as much system resources. In this situation, what I'm going to be using is operator. So just going to kind of get this set up so that I'm see what that sounds like here. Alright, so now we're hearing both this massive instance, and this operator here. I'm going to solo this so we know. There we go. Thought that sounded a little weird. Okay. Another thing for bass patches, right now I'm just playing straight off the keyboard, and a lot of times that's going to end up being in the wrong octave. So there's a real simple fix for that. You go into your MIDI effects and go to the pitch area here. I just do a -12 semitones, and I drop it right at the very beginning there. You don't even have to pay attention to it after that. Now it just plays an octave lower than whatever you were already playing. So, good to go. Alright. Next thing, when you're making an instrument that has so much diversity and character like this, you have to make sure that you're giving each part of it the space that it needs to perform in its own kind of realm. Each individual part has to have its own specialty. So, I mean, the easy way to do this is just to go, this is high, mid, and sub. When I say high, I mean it's not actually high. In this case, it's a bass patch, so it should have some bassy elements to it. Although, I mean, there are plenty of times when some just kind of superficial textures can be put on top of a bass line and get a really nice flavor. So, you know, do whatever feels right there. The next part is to drop in an EQ. So we've got 3 different parts. I'm going to drop in an EQ on each one of these. So stay with me here. Dropping an EQ 8 right here. 1 here. And 1 right here. Okay. So you'll notice as I click on each one of these are what's called a chain selector, or yeah, that's what it is. As I click on each one, it lets me see the rest of the stuff that comes after that synth is unique to that chain. So if I click over here, this EQ8 is different from this one, which is different from this one. They all look the same right now, but that's about to change. So what I need to do is make it so that they all have their own spot that they sit in the mix. So first, I'm going to make a standard high pass that just lets this high come through and pretty much cuts it off, somewhere in the mid-range. We really only need like 2 EQ points for this. Technically, you really only need 1, but I've found it to be really helpful to roll off the highs, the ultra high highs. It leaves it clears up a lot of room for the other air kind of stuff in the mix, things like reverb and saturation, stuff like that. If we can cut it out here where we're probably not going to notice it anyway, it gives us more headroom to work with other stuff later on in the mix. So what I'm going to do here is just do that. There we go. Okay, so now we've got this one here. That is a key component. I'm going to take this guy and I'll map it to macro 8. I tend to use the macro 7 and 8 for the crossover that I'm about to show you here. Just because it's it's in the bottom, it's out of the way, and you don't really need to adjust it most of the time, but sometimes you might even end up automating it. We'll see. So check this out. This now is a knob that's macroed to control that frequency. Simple enough. I'm going to come over here, and with this one, I'm going to shrink it down to 2 EQ points again. This one, I'm just going to make it just like this. And then on the mid, I tend to do this, and I don't necessarily know if this is technically correct, but it seems to make a much crisper sound in the mid-range, where a lot of times the bass is really powerful very frequently, especially when you're using good technique with your sub bass and your sidechaining your kick and everything. So that mids, I should say, the highs tend to also have a very unique character, so they stick out quite a bit. Mids, if unless you have a really awesome patch that you've made that just makes those mids sing, it can kind of get buried between these other ones. So in order to make it stand out a little bit, and this is just a very slight touch, I've been adding just a little hump on the EQ here. Now, this is where it all starts kind of getting tied together. So I take this frequency knob here, and I macro that also to macro 8. Now when this one moves, so does this one. So wherever that dot is, we get over here, you'll see that is exactly where this dot is as well. So same thing applies down here. I'm going to once again roll off those annoying frequencies at the very bottom because we don't want them. They're just going to muddy up the mix, and they don't really do us a whole lot of good right now. You really can't hear anything down in this range anyway, so good idea, just kind of roll it off. All right, now I'm going to macro this knob, macro 7. Oops, I forgot something. To go back here and map this frequency knob to that one as well. Lo and behold, this one moves. So does that one. Now we're cooking with gas. So, now these are really generic names, and they're going to get really confusing if we don't clarify a little bit. So with these, I just do, this is a low, mid, cross, over. You have to kind of get creative with some of the names on here so that it all fits. But, and this is a mid, high, cross, over. There we go. And, you know, I usually leave these right around, like, where your hands would be on the steering wheel if you were in driver's ed, you know, sort of 10 and 2. But you move it around a little bit so you can make sure that you showcase the strengths of the different parts of your multi-rack. So, that's that. Let's take a look and see how this. I mean, it's probably going to sound almost the same. All right. Let's go into the high here, and what I'm going to do is, in order to get something that actually kind of comes through on the highs with massive, you know, instead of, I have actually designed a patch that I'll be showing you later. I don't want to go through all of that right now because it's kind of a different part of the video. But what I'm going to do is go into the presets here. I'm just going to find a lead that sounds like it'll work well with bass. Sure, why not? Why not like a talking? Oh man, I need to get rid of some of these. Duplicates. Let's see. Whoa. Let's see. Let's stick with that for now. There may even be some. Oh, that's cool. There we go. That's good stuff. Okay, so now, yeah, starting to sound a little more beefy. Ooh, okay. Quick thing to go over on the operator. We need to make sure that the pitch bend stuff is going to work the same way here as it does in Massive. So the way to do that is to go, let's see if I remember exactly where this is the first time. Ah, here it is, yes. So it's 5 semitones. I am going to change that to 12 because I pretty much always do an octave of pitch bend on the bass. If I need more than that, I'll typically create a separate instrument. Things like risers and laser zaps and things like that tend to be a different instrument from the bass, although you know, there's an exception to every rule. All right, so that's done. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same exact thing on both instances of Massive, and that's just over here in the OSC tab. We go to the up and change that to 12, and change it down to -12. Make sure that time is all the way down, and then do the same thing on the high. Quick reference point here. You'll notice that when you click on these different things, it doesn't, like if you already have this Massive open and you click on this one, it doesn't magically open that one. In fact, you can have both of them open on the screen at the same time. I can't tell you how many times I have accidentally written over a patch that I was just working on because I went to the wrong instance of Massive. Sure would be nice if they put a little, you know, name of whichever chain was in there on the title there, but it's you know, maybe we can hope for that in Ableton Live 9, which I can't wait for, by the way. All right, this is the last one, I believe. Wait, no, it's oh, God, I just closed that one. See what I'm saying? You know? Alright. Up 12, down 12. Alright, wow. That was quick. Alright. Now I've got a mod wheel on my keyboard here. I'll show you what that sounds like. Nice. So that's without even doing anything at all that Massive is capable of. All we've done so far is pick a preset and chuck it in there on the first one. Now let's pick one for the mid. And again, I'm just kind of doing this for the sake of brevity. Ideally, when you're making a track, you want to, you can start with a preset, but it's a good idea to try to come up with something that is truly your own before you're actually releasing a track. Okay, why don't we go with, let's give one a little more girth than the last one. I'm going to solo this so I can hear it. All right. Okay, I like that. Ooh, all right. Well, that's certainly a fun sound. In fact, I like that modulation so much that I'm going to go ahead, and this is another nice thing about putting together these multi-racks, is that you can get an infinite amount of further sound design because you have all these different instruments to play with individually, and you can set them all up so that different instruments get modulated in different ways with a single parameter. Let's talk more action. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Alright, so if you click this little arrow here, it expands it out, and it says to add plugin parameters to this panel, click the configure button. So what I'm going to do is click the configure button, and the parameter I was just playing with, I believe, was this talk one. Let me make sure. Yes, it was. Now, did you see how that popped up right down there? Now, yeah. Okay, so now I can get to that parameter without having Massive open. In fact, I can even macro it out, which is another nice thing about having all this stuff in one instrument rack, because anything that's in an instrument rack put together, as long as that parameter is capable of being automated at all within Ableton Live, you can automate it to these macro knobs, which then can be used in clip envelopes. They can be used in arrangement view automation lanes. The sky is the limit with this setup, and it's very, very easy to make really, really intricate, unique, reusable instrument racks, where you could use a particular kind of character of an instrument rack in one track, and then just make some simple tweaks to it. You're essentially using the very same fundamental instruments, maybe even the same patches with just a little bit of change to some of their built-in parameters like this, and then all of a sudden you've got a completely different sound that you can that's fresh. So I'm going to find another parameter in this one that I can also macro out, so I can show you what I would do with those put together. So let's see here. In this patch, let me see here. Crush. Well, Oh, there we go. Alright, well, there's some things I can play around with here. I mean, it's not the best patch in the world, but... Alright, check this out. What about if I say, alright, well, I liked being able to play with that one, and that one, and that one. All three of them. It's really nice because it actually names them the same as what it is in the plugin, so it's really easy to remember exactly what you were working with. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to quickly map this to one of these macro knobs out here. I'm just going to go with macro 2 because I usually use the macro 1 for a completely different role, and I'll show you what that is in here in a moment. Map to macro 2. One thing that I do want to do before I continue here is just bear with me. That's not really a desirable part of that. I mean, there's really almost no sound coming through there. I want to kind of cut off right somewhere around there. So the way to do that is once you've got it all mapped already, just click on this little map mode button there. And I'm going to change that one to, what was it, 92, something like that. You got to make sure that you have this one cranked up all the way, though, in order for it to go the entire distance. You'll see what I mean here in a second. Did it not take that? Back that off a little more. Oh, there we go. Let's try something like that. Let's see what that sounds like. Perfect. Alright, coming back over to this high parameter here. Why don't I go with this guy, and I'm going to map that to macro 2 as well. But with this, I mean, that was a delicate parameter. I mean, that one... That's going to sound weird if we just do it like that. What I'm thinking is I'll actually set that one with just a tad. Like, have the max be just a little more like that. And see what happens. See, even that's too much. Here we go. Maybe a little more. Can afford to go a little crazy. All right. Nice. What else do we want with that sound? Probably not too much of that, but you know, we can go. Yeah, right about there. Why not? Map to macro 2. And pull that one down to somewhere in, I think it was right around in there, right? Let's see. Yeah, it's actually starting to get kind of dissonant. I'm going to back that off. There we go. I want to maintain that actual musicality of it. All right. Oh, and then this one more here. The shifter. Oops. Jeez. Remember what I'm doing here. I guess I must not have actually used that parameter when we were first playing around with the plugin. That would be useful in the second half of this tutorial, but at that point we're going to be using a different set of channels anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. The way you do that is just click on the configure, click on it, delete. Since I don't need it there, try not to keep things cluttered. All right, now check out what we got here. Nice. All right, now that is a really solid bass patch. It has character. And you can EQ it differently to get even more stuff out of it. And again, try to keep these, you know, somewhere around the middle for when they're just sitting there. But this is going to be a very full sounding synth. The next part for these multi-racks, to really get them to where they're very useful and to where you can even take this a few steps further, I'll let you kind of explore that path yourself, that is to open up the chain selector here. That gives you this 0 through 127, or a total of 128 positions, along which this little orange marker here, which is called the chain selector, can be positioned. What this orange marker means is if it's hovering over the 40 mark, whatever is below that marker, in whatever potency it has at that exact spot, this chain, this total group of chains, is actually going to pull audio signal from all the pieces that are lined up underneath this marker, according to how much they're turned up, basically. So let me give you a demo real quick here. I'm just going to select all of these. I'm going to grab the right-hand side of this. Now you can see there's a little bracket that shows there. That means that you're grabbing the right-hand side of it. You click and drag. Now we've got all three of them across the entire range. What I do here is map that to macro 1. It's okay to leave it as chain selector. And why don't I give this a name. Talk. Whoop. Wow. There we go. That now moves back and forth there. So, a lot of good this will do you, because they're all turned on all the time right now. It doesn't matter where that chain selector goes. Well, this is kind of hard to see, even on my huge monitor here. If you are clicking on this part, it moves the whole thing back and forth. That's the part where you're, you know, kind of in the middle of the bar. Now, if you click up here at the top, now you see that little light colored bar that gets lighter there? That is effectively like a graphical representation of a potentiometer. Be the best way to describe it. As I, over here at the left-hand side, assuming we've got this soloed, check this out. Basically nothing there at all. As the chain selector moves toward that direction, you hear it more. You know what we need? This synth needs a bit more volume, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, we can give it plenty more over here. In fact, why not actually give it a bit more? Okay, That sounds like crap. Does it turn up all the way? No. Well, when the synth won't give you enough, you can always come back over here and grab trusty utility. And since this one's kind of up in the airy part of the spectrum, I'm going to give it a little width boost, like 120 is about right in my experience. And a little bit of gain. Let's see how that comes out here. Now what I'm going to do is compare the way that little thing shows up compared to the others. Might be a little loud compared to the other. Now, of course, that sub is just coming through like a freight train. I'm just going to turn the volume down on here. You know what? It needs a utility anyway. I'll go ahead and drop one of those on there. Boop. And then, of course, jack that width down to 0 and tame it a bit. Let's see how that comes through. That's still quite a bit louder. So we're noting the position of that green bar in relation to the rest of the kind of empty space there. That's showing that sub is still coming through really strong. So I'm going to scale that back a little more. There we go. That's a bit more balanced. All right. Where were we? Oh, yes. Okay, so chain selector. See what that does? I can have sounds that are on and then introduce more sounds just by turning a knob. And I mean, it could be anything in this spot. You can use, you know, a simpler or a sampler to introduce actual like samples such as vocals or things like that. You can put anything in here that goes in an instrument rack. So really encourage you to play with the chain selector automation and really get the most out of that, because it's a great tool. So now I'm going to take this mid-range here, and I'm actually going to do the exact opposite, like that. Watch what happens here. Okay, so that's a really diverse sounding character all in itself, without even messing with the talk knob at all. If I turn that down, looks like this one's going to need a little bit of taming as well. Drop this over here, and you know, I'm going to take the width down to like 85 on this one. And there we go. There we go. All right. And man, that high still is not coming through. I'm getting the sneaking suspicion that they are not in the same key for some reason. Hang on a sec. It's just a lot of harmonics. Okay. As you can see, we're getting lots and lots of different sounds out of this one instrument rack. And it's all self-contained. You can even save it into your library and pull it back up later. If you have a really amazing idea that comes through at some point, you can always recall it as a package. Okay, so that's how the bass part works. Oh, of course, right now we have the subwoofer, the sub bass. It's all running through this mix gel compressor over here, but on patches like this where we've got a specific part of it that's designed to play just for the subwoofer, we need to make sure we get that bass part out of the way when the kick drum comes through. I do have a little ditty on the drums that I wrote right before this tutorial. Okay. Real quick, let me show you how this drum kit is set up. I've got a kick selector, a snare selector, a kick 2 selector, and a snare 2 selector, and then I have these open and closed hats, which I don't typically have to go through a whole lot of hat samples before I find one that works real well. And then I have them actually grouped so that they're, the snares are all set up in here, and then you can play snare 1 or 2 in there, and they'll play out here. Same thing with the kicks 1 and 2, and then the hats, you'll see open hat and closed hat. It's really nice to have all that stuff organized. I really wish they'd let me expand this. Anyway. So, we don't actually have a snare playing right now, or sorry, a hi-hat playing right now. Here, let's see. There we go. Nice. So, the kick is in its own group. The nice thing about racks, same thing with instrument racks that you have on your MIDI channels, on your drum rack, you can do a lot of sort of individual treatment of different parts of the same rack. You can even kind of link them with other parts of your same project really easily. So, for instance, in this case, even if I had 2 separate kicks that played at different parts during the track, as long as they're both part of this same sub rack that's inside this drum rack, named kicks, I can come to any of my bass patches anywhere in the entire track and add a compressor. I'm going to drop this compressor on the operator channel, since that is our sub bass. Compressor. Alright, and I'm going to give it a nice, a little bit of a knee. I'm going to slam the ratio somewhere around there. Drop the threshold like that. Oops. Okay, where is it? Hopefully that comes down a little bit further. I've got so many of these things already set up in racks. It's been a while since I've set one up. Okay. Oh, here we go. Sidechain. Alright. So in order to set up this compressor so that it makes the bass drop out of the way for the kick drum, we go over here and go into the sidechain. Now, this is the part where having this drum rack set up with the kicks all clustered together in one comes really handy. Audio input from, and I go to the drum rack. Check out this huge list of different things I can use as the exact point of origin for that sidechain signal. The very first one being this kicks. Now you'll see down here you can actually go dig down deeper into it, and so you can choose kick 1. or kick one rack, all the way down to individual samples within that rack. Over here, you might have noticed I actually have, I guess I didn't scroll over that far. In the kicks, I've got a kick one rack here, and then there's a chain selector, again very similar to what we had over in the instrument multi-rack view for the bass instrument. You can choose different kick samples, and that little chain selector is mapped out to this knob here. Makes it nice and easy. Alright, back to what we were doing over here. I'm going to set the input source for the sidechain to the kicks pre-effects. Make sure that the sound is coming through crisp and clear. It's not getting any sort of distortion added to it, or any, especially any like delay or reverb or anything like that. You don't want those to come through on your sidechain for your compressor, because that part of the kick doesn't interfere with the bass line. So it's totally okay to let those parts come through naturally. All right, so there. That's kind of more what I was looking for. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of dry wet. Basically, that's gonna be doing parallel compression. I don't really want to get into the really nitty-gritty stuff on the parallel compression right now. I do already have another video out there on that, but I'm just doing just enough so that there's part of the signal that comes through compressed, and there's part that comes through uncompressed. Oh, you know, I'm sorry, this is the bass patch. I don't need to be doing parallel compression on this one. That would be on the kicks, which already have their own parallel compression. My bad. Need sleep. Okay, so back over here. Now that sidechain is done. If I were to play a note on here while that drum sequence is playing, see how that part right there is ducking a little bit, but it's not the other ones. Well, that's not in the kick range. That's certainly not in the kick range. Only this is in the kick range. So that's the only one that really needs to duck out of the way. And by separating them out and doing, basically that's called multi-band processing, multi-band dynamics. There's a lot of different names for it, but by doing that, I can achieve the desired result of sidechaining the kick drum into the bass, which is a clean, crisp bass line and a loud, in-your-face kick drum that somehow just play along together. You know, there's a lot of producers, myself included, who will actually make an intentional effect out of sidechaining things, and that has its place too. But in most circumstances, you kind of want to have it set up so that you don't really hear the bass ducking out of the way for the kick drum. It just kind of happens, and everything's nice and loud and full as a default. So, all right, so that's done. Cool, nice instrument there. So we've got a very versatile instrument here. What would be kind of cool is if I could find a way to, I suppose I could take the talk parameter from the mid here and actually reverse route it to the chain selector, so that as the chain selector goes up, the talk goes down. Why not? Let's see what that sounds like. Map to chain selector. Remember, we got to go over here into map mode and reverse the mapping parameters so that the minimum is the max and the max is the min. You can just right click on that line and hit invert range and it'll do that for you. So now, oh, there we go. That's nice. Oh, yeah, all right, nice. Let's see what this sounds like. That is having the unintended effect of cutting off a good portion of the stuff that's fun to listen to. So I have two options here. I can either extend this out a little bit longer so I can get more of that. A better way to do it would be to make it so that the minimum on that talk parameter, you know, so that it basically cuts out somewhere around like 15 to 17.15. All right, way we do that is go back over here and go into that talk parameter once again. Let's see here. There we go. Let's go to like 0.15. Oh. It's the tricky thing about this 128 based system. If you think about everything as being base 10, like almost everything else in life is, you'll end up screwing up because your knob is turned up all the way at 128. But when you think of 100%, it's just 100. So good thing to keep in mind, always make sure that you turn your knob all the way up if you're going to be modulating it the whole way, and then you can make adjustments to how far you actually want it to go using this stuff here. But again, I'm just looking at this number over here and saying, okay, well, you know, in reality, it's going to end up being right around where I wanted it. Still gonna give myself a little more room here, and why not try to get the symmetry so that it nice, and we can basically turn that talk all the way down. Completely get rid of that because it's not necessary anymore. Let's see here. Oh, I suppose there's actually nothing really tied into that anymore. What am I modulating here? Hang on. Aha! The crush stuff is still there. Okay. Well, I'm going to rename that so that it stays consistent. Crush. And then chain selector. And let's leave that about where it is. Nice. All right. Okay, so I had plans to show you a lead, but it's basically the same as what you've already seen here. You know, you put different instruments together. I mean, I used 2 different instances of Massive, but if you're more of a fan of Silent or Zebra or FM8 or, I mean, you can put any VST synths together. You can put the ones that are built into Live together. You can use third-party plugins. If you're on a Mac, you can use AUs and VSTs together at once. This is the ultimate Swiss Army knife of synthesizer construction. So you can basically do exactly the same thing if you were to make a lead. You just put the stuff in there, make the EQs the same way you did over here. Pretty much you could almost just copy this, drop it over there, and then use different presets for these. You probably wouldn't have a sub. You'd use a lower range one, but yeah. So because in the interest of time, I want to make sure we kind of keep moving forward here. I'm going to collapse this one here, and because we're pretty much done with working on that, I want to show you what I've been making. I'm going to make sure I didn't leave any MIDI clips in there. All right. Little experiment I've been working on. I've got, well, there's pretty much no need for a lead in here because I didn't even put one in. I've got basically almost exactly the same thing you've just seen me put together there. Was two different voices of Massive and sub oscillator made from Operator. Again, a negative 12 semitones pitch modifier, and pretty much everything is exactly the same, except for the fact that it is all tied in with this little gem that I talked about in the last video I put up. That video covered the idea of using MIDI signal from an external source to modulate your synthesizers in a way that people don't normally think they can do. In fact, I haven't seen anybody else do this, so I'm not even sure if people are aware they can do this. I'm sure someone out there has figured out a way to do it prior to this, but it's kind of fun to make the discovery myself and to be able to share it with you guys. So what I've done is, this is an analog instrument, which is one that's built into Live. There's a lot of things that analog is good for, making relatively simple analog synthesis sounds. But the thing that I use it for primarily is for making really simple, easy to throw in, very low system resource usage, white noise. Why would I have white noise, you might ask? Well, I don't. Not audible anyway. I'm using white noise out of this analog synth as an audio trigger for another part of the program. Just like we can set up our kick drum to sidechain the compressor on another channel, I can take the audio output from this, and if it's making little white hissy noises going I can sidechain that to a gate device on another channel. So I've been using that pretty extensively for making glitch effects for probably almost a year now, and that comes in real handy, especially if you don't want to have to mess with changing around the parameters of your ADSR envelopes. That's attack, decay, sustain, and release. Glitching stuff up can be kind of a hassle if you're trying to make a sound nice and crisp. But if you've already got sort of a lazy attack and decay on a sound, it's not going to sound at all crisp or choppy if you just put stuttered notes in your MIDI in your piano roll. So putting a gator on that channel and sidechaining that to the output from a separate channel that is set up to just play white noise in little staccato increments to the pattern of what you want that that glitch section to sound like. That allows you to achieve that effect without having to automate the parameters of your ADSR envelope, which can be kind of a pain. So what I'm doing here is kind of an offshoot of that. I'm taking this white noise. Right now I've actually got it set up so that it is a wobbling white noise, and it's doing, you can see, oops, here in this amp section, it's panning and changing the level of the basically the total output volume level. So along with that wobble there, and I can change the rate of the wobble here, as you saw me do earlier. That is where this comes really in handy, because I can take this and make some really interesting changes to, say, Massive or another instrument that may not have the ability to get really down into the nitty-gritty, especially in cases like, okay, what if I want to set a wobble that I know is going to be on quarter notes, then eighth notes, then 16th notes, and then down to third notes, and then all the way up to 15th, 16th notes, all up and down on a scale. Well, the problem with doing that without something like this is that when you are in Massive, just to kind of show you what that looks like. In here, to change that information, you're having to go to this ratio. Well, if you automate these out, in my experience, it doesn't really give you a very solid, it doesn't really land where it's supposed to. You kind of have to just mess with it until it ends up sounding right. I wanted something that I could give myself a very definite, okay, I'm going to turn this knob from here to there, and it's going to sound like this. What I've developed here allows me that luxury and more. For this section, you can see that I've got different parameters here than I had over on the other one, although they're similar. The reason these are turned up, they look like they're turned up all the way, but if you look at the actual positioning of the orange there, that indicates where they really stand. The reason they're turned up all the way is that that is their total potential. They can go all the way from 0 all the way on up to 22,000 hertz. So don't let that fool you. This amount knob here, that changes as well. You know, the automation in my clip envelopes is what's controlling this part here, and then I'm controlling where this little black bar goes. Okay. This little guy, Macro 5, doesn't really have a name because every time I try to name it, it bounces back to something else. The reason for that being that I'm doing something really goofy with it. This wobble trigger channel that you see here, it's silenced. So is this one. So is this one. And the only reason that this one's turned on is because all the parts within it are already silenced, so you won't actually hear any of them. And for some reason, it has to be turned on for other channels to hear the data that's coming out of this little cluster here. I'm going to rearrange this so that it's a little bit easier to work with. All right. This cluster, well, let's see here. Without giving too much away, I kind of want to... Oh yeah, it's already set. So, check this out. Where was I? Is there something soloed right now? Oh, there we go. I don't know what that was all about. Okay. Ah, there it is. All right. So, scene 1. I have a very, very simple sounding. I'll even... Now, notice, you heard those wobbles when the drum was playing, right? Well, it's not just when the drum is playing, it's when... That's being controlled by this. See these things popping up and down like that? This is a really neat little plugin that I found completely by accident, and it's really changed the way that I produce. It's called MIDI Audio 2CC. It is free for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Really no excuse not to have this plugin. There's actually a lot of other plugins that come in the same little package that this comes with. Lots of really fascinating stuff to play with. Lots of ways to manipulate audio and MIDI and kind of blur the lines between them, as you see in this case. What's happening here is, let me solo this channel so you can actually hear what's coming out and understand. Well, I probably ought to turn that down a little because it's probably going to blast me right in the ear. Let's see. Oh, right. Okay, well that seems to change the levels that are playing on there. I'm not going to try to change that because that would potentially mess up my automation that I've already set up. So, alright, well here goes, I suppose. Let's see. Come on. Oh, duh. Oh, I suppose I can do this real quick. I'm going to use one of these sends since it's actually sending its audio out to sends. I'm going to send it out through one of the send channels. Kind of sounds like a pleasant ocean on a beach, something. Man, I really need sleep. Okay, so what you're hearing there is that's the carrier wave that sends instruction. So that's coming from this channel here. As you can see, it's set up to send only. This channel here is pulling its audio from Wobble Trigger, this channel here. And this is pulling in pre-effects. Always want to do that. It's doing no actual audio output to the master bus, but this little plugin that's sitting here generates an internal MIDI signal that Ableton Live and macOS know how to handle. Over here, as you can see, it's taking MIDI from A2M Audio, which is that channel. And then it's sending it from there on out to the IAC driver, which is that's built into macOS, but there's a way to do it on PC called MIDI Yoke. That's Y-O-K-E, like for hitching up oxen. That's a free thing to use as well. What it's doing is it's making a virtual MIDI loopback device so that I can send MIDI signals out from Ableton Live right back into itself, because there's a few things that Ableton really doesn't know how to do itself, or the designers were too busy doing other things to add features like that in there. But we can still send the signals out as if we were going to be interacting with another program or another device or something like that. We basically just use the operating system to bounce it back into Ableton Live as if it was being sent from a different device. Well, I'm sending it out to IAC driver in the operating system on channel 16. I usually just use channel 16 for these kind of things to make sure that it stays out of the way of all my other devices, which tend to be on the lower numbered channels. Now over here, let's see, where was I? Ah, yes. So the output that you were seeing there going up and down like that. Oh, I should probably show you what that looks like. It's kind of cool looking, actually. So you're seeing those things rising and falling, but over in here, you can see this envelope is changing up and down, and that is what powers this whole device, this whole contraption I've put together here. I do want to see if I can fix one thing real quick here, because I think I've got some phasing issues. Let's see. Yep, that's what I thought. Just wanted to get a more even sort of path for that waveform. It seemed like it was kind of hesitating in some spots and hurrying through other spots. Let's just see how that shows up over here. Could be better. Might have something to do with, let me come over here and take a look real quick. Retrigger. Let's see, I'm going to pan that hard left so it just goes through that one channel. And let's see here. Make sure that all these things are turned down. Doesn't really matter very much that the that it's only going through the left channel there, because we only need one source of signal for this guy to work. Again, you can see it's going up and down. Not too smooth. Let me see here if I can get a little more smoothness. That's a little better. All right. I gotta get the total volume so it's not peaking out like that, because it's actually it's pegging over here. See how it actually is? It's only going most of the way up there. We kind of want it to hit all the way. And I believe the way to do that would be to come over to here where I've set up the mapping. Or is that in here? Apologies, technical difficulties. My brain is on the verge of collapse. I've been up for 2.5 days now. Sometimes I just really get in the zone and I can't stop working on tracks. It's probably pretty unhealthy, but I don't know, makes me happy. Alright, well, you know, I'm not going to worry about it right now. It seems like it's kind of doing its thing. Doesn't really seem like there's anything really wrong with it. I'm just going to see how it sounds. So, to play all of this together. Man, that just peaked down there real hard. activated or it doesn't actually send MIDI signal, even though it's not really sending any audio that we're going to hear at all. It's sending modulation information, which apparently the system needs to see that this channel is active for that to even come out. So, here we go. I've got clip envelopes set up on all of these. And if I go into the clip here, you'll see I've got bass multi-rack, and then I have the voice. On this one, it's set all the way down at 0, which is the voice parameter on this one is this guy. The one in the upper left is mapped to this, which is why you're only hearing those two parts. As soon as I play this next clip, it'll actually jump up to the next. It'll play from somewhere in here, which you'll end up hearing this character, which isn't playing at all right now, which is the most interesting synth I've ever made. That's voice, amount. This is sort of a... The way I have the amount set up in this rack is I'm using it as a multiplier, I guess would be the best way to put that. Basically, everywhere this 2 is set up on here, it's increasing the effectiveness of whatever is already being applied in there. As you can see, I'm actually using macro knobs for everything. I'm not using the built-in LFOs really at all, because I'm using this external source of modulation information instead of using these built-in LFOs, which don't happen to work very well with swing. They don't really match up too well when you're trying to make a wobble that is quantized to the beat. You kind of have to mess with it. Using this skips all that. One more thing that was in here that I'm modulating is the low-mid crossover. On here, it's actually set almost all the way down at the bottom. Alright, seriously, with no further ado, I'm going to show you what all this sounds like, because it's pretty awesome. So there's that other character coming through. You can kind of hear it now. It's going to get a little more intense. Comes. Again, that white noise trigger signal is what's powering this little thing to move back and forth. And inside that wobble parameter is being used to modulate basically everything. If I want to change the speed how about we break down what I'm doing in this here, because that instrument right there is this part of this tutorial, the IDM phase wobbles. What you're hearing is that wobble is not being done with filters at all. Check it. I'm actually going to solo that channel, and I'm going to isolate these as well so we can get just see, no filters. That wobbling is being done with, well, okay, so it's a bit of a misnomer. I shouldn't have called it just phase wobbles, because I'm also doing some wavetable position modulation as well. So between that, what you're hearing more though is the effect of this phaser here, and of these little tweaks that I've put in here. By detuning oscillators slightly one way or the other, and kind of allowing their waveforms to fall in and out of phase with each other, that's where you're hearing that weird sort of wobble, 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 wobble kind of stuff. And it's been used for a long time. I mean, I can think of classic rock that I've heard that has that kind of stuff in it. A lot of the like psychedelic rock era had things like that in it. You know, some of the more recent stuff, although not incredibly recent, such as Eastern Jam. I'm trying to remember the name of the who's the artist on this? It's not coming to me. Ah, Jason Status. You'll hear it here in this vocal part at the very beginning. That was actually the inspiration originally for me to start kind of getting into IDM. I just wanted something a little more intellectual. You know, it's great, electro house, dubstep, breaks, you know, I love all of it, but it's not a full spectrum. Sometimes I need something I can sit on my bed and listen to, you know, with the lights down low, and try to see if I can pick out shapes in the ceiling and stuff. It's fun to let the music carry you away sometimes, and the really, really hardcore dance floor bangers, they're great for dance floor mayhem, but they lack in the sort of intellectual side. I guess that's why it's called IDM. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent there. So going back to the beginning on this part, I'll show you the difference in sound. Why is that not coming through now? Oh, right, because that one's soloed. You're hearing this, and that's sidechain to the kick drum. That's why you hear it kind of bobbing in and out like that. And watch what happens when I click this next scene. See how that jumped up? That's done entirely with clip envelopes. I can't stress enough how totally useful it is, and to use the session view for 95% of your producing. Do all your sound design here, do all of your even a lot of your automation can be done here, because if you do it one place and you keep that as one clip, then as many times as you need to paste that clip into your arrangement view when you're actually ready to do the arrangement of your track, you can just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, None of this worrying about, now I have to go grab all of the automation off of all the different parts of that clip and go apply it to all the other places that that clip appears in the track. This is an incredibly useful mode of this program, and I think a lot of newbie producers, myself a year or two ago included, really overlook it because it's not set up the way that they're used to seeing a normal music sequencer. And I think that when Ableton made Live, they really kind of broke the mold. That they were shooting for something completely different that would change the paradigm of music production, and I believe they succeeded. They really gave producers something completely new to work with that allows for live performance and production. It's this incredibly strong platform for both, and using that session view when producing stuff, I think has drastically reduced the amount of time that it takes me to finish a track, because I can get all of the fundamental building blocks put in place first, then decide how I want to arrange them. Kind of like, you know, a contractor, you're trying to build a house. They don't just show up to the build site without any materials and then go to the Home Depot for every single thing and then come back and say, okay, what do we need next? You know, they plan the building out ahead of time. They have the blueprints and assemble it, you know, as much as possible, a comprehensive list of everything they need. Go and get all the supplies ahead of time, then show up at the work site. Inevitably, there's going to be things that you missed the first time around that you're going to have to go back and fix in your arrangement view. But if you do most of your preparation work in session view, you'll end up sparing yourself quite a bit of hassle in the arrangement view, because things are just not set up to be, I guess the workflow is not as smooth on that side if you're actually in production mode. It's great for dragging things around as long as you have those parts, but if you're trying to put them all together on the if you're trying to build them on the spot and put them together, I think that's a fool's errand. No offense to anyone. Okay, so that when we played this, you saw it jump up there. I think you may have also seen that this knob moved up a little bit. You can see it actually moving down and up a little bit. There's automation built into this clip. If I go to the mid-high crossover, you can see how it goes down, back up. So there's, let's see here, play this one here. It gets a little more dramatic, a little bit deeper cut there. Oops. So that little amount knob that I had out here, that's being modulated in here as well. You know, it's starting off low, and it's getting more and more intense. And I kind of left this one a little bit more freeform so I could kind of adjust it to the feel of how I wanted it. But alright, last thing I'm going to cover in this tutorial is how I made this crazy sounding synth. So, you know, if you were to look at this patch without knowing about the settings, this little cluster of tools there, you'd say, wow, that is a lot of macro automation that you're going to have to draw in manually into your clip envelopes or into your arrangement view. Either way, it's a pain in the ass if you're doing it that way. Fortunately, I found a way to automate that stuff, so it's not going to be nearly as much of a hassle. Oscillator 1. Let's see, I'm going to turn everything off except for the first oscillator so you hear what it's doing. Turn off feedback, turn everything off. fact, turn all the effects off too. Turn off the EQ so you're just hearing just the real bare necessities. So all you're going to be hearing is oscillator 1. You can see this 1 is moving up and down here. Now the 1, I just found this out, and it's probably just because I finally took the time to read the manual. The way that Massive is set up, each of these little positions down here gives you the ability to add automation, which you've probably figured out already, but you probably didn't know exactly what these little arrows do. If the arrow is going up, it means that dragging this number up and creating one of these little things is going to be, the effect of that will be applied in the same direction. I hope that made sense. Basically, if I had this all at 0 and I had 1 in there and then I click and drag up, if the arrow points up, then when I set this sidechain over here with the 2 and I turn that up, it means that every movement of this knob is actually going to push that bar to the right. In this case, I have it pointed down, which means that it does the opposite. It's useful in this situation because I couldn't really figure out why it would sound better one way than the other, but I'm really glad that they put both modes in there. If you do the arrow up, it means it goes with it. If you do it down, it means it goes the opposite direction. And then there's a third option, which is if you, let me show you what this looks like so I'm not going to mess up what I got over there. There's a third option, which is that little line in the middle, which means that it goes back and forth, basically the same way as an LFO oscillator. Ugh, I can't believe I just said LFO oscillator. It's like saying ATM machine. Brought to you by the Department of Redundancy Department. So, in these scenarios, I've already got pretty much all this dialed in the way I wanted it, the way I thought it sounded best. So, there's that. I'll play through each one of these oscillators separately so you can hear what they sound like. I'm using all voices from the digital/hybrid family, but I really think that modern talking is incredibly overused, and so I try not to use that one whenever possible, and if I do, I put a bunch of other effects and stuff on it and try to disguise it, because people are getting sick of that wavetable. Sad, because it was really cool, and people shouldn't have overused it, but... Here's another one. Melomantic. This one was Mellifont. What you're seeing here is this one knob, is it moves back and forth, is going back and forth on here, and this 2 is being controlled by this parameter here. So if that were to be turned up, then this whole knob would be turned slightly to the side, and because the 2 is being used for the sidechain on here, it means that both of those will be exaggerated. Their effect will be applied to a greater extent than it normally would have been. Putting the same macro knob here and here with the sidechain, that's what the SC stands for, enabled, is basically like a way to achieve an exponential change in the way the knob behaves. You'll hear that more as I kind of unwrap the rest of this preset. Specifically, when you hear the wobbles get faster and faster in frequency, it's not just when I'm modulating this wobble knob here and changing the frequency of it with that with the wobble trigger, but these numbers here, as they get applied more heavily As this thing turns up, those numbers get further and further out of tune with the original oscillator, and by doing so, they tend to phase more quickly, and that actually is what creates that sort of wah, 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 wah. That's a phase. That's the way your brain interprets the sound of two different, almost identical sounds coming in, almost slightly out of phase from each other. You hear that sort of beats basically as they synchronize and unsynchronize with each other. Oscillator 3. This one is Scrapyard, a big favorite of mine, and a producer I've been following extensively, named Vespers, basically responsible for me knowing almost everything I know about Ableton. Shout goes out to DJ Vespers in Canada. Keep it up, man. All three together. Much more interesting sound. Still not incredibly impressive, which is where we come in with phase modulation using this modulation oscillator. Turn on the feedback here, and what that does is pause that for a sec since it's getting kind of repetitive. The routing over here, it's taking, alright, basically the way that these insert effects work is that it drops this effect into the chain in this diagram. So here's the oscillators, they run out through, you know, you have an opportunity to put one of the two insert effects here. Then it goes through filter 1, you have an opportunity to put insert effects in here as well. Then you can choose to have the feedback send back to the start from here, or from here, or from here, or here, all the way down the chain. There's different places that you can insert the feedback loop and the insert effects, and that will drastically change the sound of what comes out by just changing those things around, and I'll demonstrate that here in a sec. Check this out. I'm going to turn the feedback on, actually here, turn it off first and hear what the difference is once I turn this on and start adding stuff to it. Just turning it on without even having any effects has an audible, noticeable difference. It fattens up the sound quite a bit. And I think part of the reason that that's happening is because there's movement here. We've got the 1 is being modulated by this wobble macro control knob, which is being further modulated by the sidechain on this 2 over here. So the higher that knob is turned up, the more exaggerated that curve becomes. I'm going to turn on this. Now this frequency shift here, I never had found a good use for this until, well, basically like last night. I thought, man, why would I want to change the notes that the synth is playing? It just sounds out of tune and terrible. I never thought about trying to pitch it really, really close to the original tune that's coming out of the oscillators, and then just change it ever so slightly so that we get that phasing effect. Watch what happens now. When I accidentally discovered that, I was like, whoa, that is a sound I've been trying to achieve for a long time. I need to come up with a good process for this. Hence, this video. Moving along. Insert 2, where I have a parabolic shaper. Oops. Alright, here we go. Just adds a little bit of grit to it. Now, what happens if I move the feedback loop insertion point around? It drastically changes the sound that comes out. Well, I can hear it. If you're on good headphones or a nice set of studio monitors, you can probably hear it too. What's even more drastic than that is when you change around the insertion points of these effects. So I'm going to remember this is 2 and this is 1. Move them around. Pretty much everything else sounds kind of wimpy comparatively speaking. Basically, I went and tried basically every combination I could think of until I found one that really sort of cut the mustard. Again, not using any filters at all, so I'm going to completely skip that section. This is another thing, a first for me, modulating the, automating the effect of the pan position. Setting that up with a little neutral. It's not up, not down. It's in the middle. It's going. It's bouncing back and forth along that line. And with the 2 here having turn up. If I were to turn that down, you'd basically almost hear nothing because it would be not moving back and forth. Or you'd hear the basic synth sound, but it wouldn't be really wobbling the way that it does right now. So I can't really turn that. I suppose I can mute this first so you can kind of hear the difference. If you're wearing headphones, it'll be incredibly obvious the difference here. So it's playing around in the stereo field, basically. It's completely changing the stereo properties of the sound you're hearing. Put that together into a whole track, and especially if you can be strategic enough to make sure that the instruments that are playing at the same time don't end up bouncing onto the same channels at the same time, and they can kind of avoid each other and sort of dance around each other. You can get a really cool soundscape that if you listen to it on headphones, you could basically feel like you're being transported to an alternate dimension. The phaser turned off. All the parameters are being automated in some way by the incoming data and the macro controls. Turned on. Big difference. Dimension expander is effectively a slapback delay, a really short one. Gives I believe it's actually has a little bit of stereo work done in it as well, so that it gives a sort of a feeling of being in a room. It's not quite the same thing as reverb. It's kind of a cross between a reverb and a delay, a real short delay. But hearing the difference between the two, it made a believer out of me. Off and on. Sort of sounds like you're in a cave or something like that. Again, not the same thing as reverb. I think that the dimension expander is quite a bit more crisp than having your average reverb. It's a good thing to add into your built-in effects chain on Massive. Play around with that and see if you can get something good out of it. Put the EQ on there, like without the EQ, and with. What I've done there is automate the low shelf, high shelf, and frequency of the EQ. Just totally changing. If it were to be one of these EQ things down here, it would be getting bubbles and shifting all over the place. It would look like a waterbed after a kid just got done jumping on it. It'd just be going all over the place, and that's good in this situation because we want it to sound weird. This isn't the main bass part of the patch. That's what the sub bass down here is for. This is clear, just there for texture. Okay. So close. I think I have one or two more things. Yes, okay. Over here in voicing, I have unison set to 2, mono rotate and legato triller. Not that it really matters in this case because I'm not doing any legato progressions, but at some point I might be, especially since it's a bass line. I do a lot of legatos with my bass lines, so it's a nice thing to have that in there. It allows for a more rich, full sound. When you have mono rotate, it allows you to play more than one voice, but still get the effect like you're, you know, hold down one key, press another key, and it glides to that note, let it go, and it goes right back to it. That's what legato triller does. I'm modulating the pitch cutoff on the spread with the 2 knob, and same thing with this pan position. What's happening there is the more this knob gets turned up, the more funky this stuff gets. So, you know, if I were to come over here and turn this amount knob down, I mean, it's pretty funky, but it's not as funky as... So, that's what that's there for, just to give me a little more expression besides just the wobble knob itself and the voice, allowing me to shift between the different voices of this composite synth. So those together, and I think I put together a real simple. I might have even just chosen a preset. Yeah, I went with a preset on this one. This one's actually automated as well. You can see where it says LP filter. That's a low pass filter. That that parameter is tied in with, let's see, where is it? This guy, number 3. So here, yep, you can see that there. Wow, that's the only one that's just tied in with that, so it moves it back and forth just like that. So that sounds like, oh, you can't hear it now. How about this? And that amount actually sounded a little bit too much, which is why I have it set so I can kind of dial it back if I need to. I don't think I ever showed you what's causing that knob actually to change. So the thing that's actually causing it to go back and forth quickly is this here. It's the LFO. And then the rate is being modulated by this. It's if you go straight to the wobble trigger, and then pull up the LFO sync rate, LFO 1. And then I basically just, I drew this in by hand to kind of give me that. I wanted it to, you know, start off kind of fast, slow down, speed up a little bit, and then slow down, and then speed up again at the end. So that is a wrap for this tutorial video. That sure was long. How long did I go on this? Wow. This is even longer than the other tutorial video. Woohoo! Alright. Well, my computer has some work to do with transcoding this video, so thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to my channel so you can get, every time that I make another one of these videos, you'll get the scoop. You should also follow me on Facebook and Twitter. That'd be facebook.com/Blendrix, twitter.com/Blendrix. You can also go to blendrix.com. You can go there and you can download any of my tracks that are available for free. Most of the time, I do release my tracks for free. I do have one that's available for sale on Beatport now. Woo! So yes, please connect with me on the various social media. Tell me what you think of this video. Ask me questions. Suggest things to me. Criticize my lack of good speaking ability on my sleep deprivation. Wow, it was like I failed at making the sentence that was about having failed sentences. Huh. Meta fail. Alright, that is it. You guys all have an awesome rest of your day, and happy producing. Colorado EDM for life!